Sometimes history doesn't arrive with loud cheers or grand announcements. Sometimes it comes quietly, on familiar tracks, into the heart of everyday life. On a calm day in Lancashire, without spectacle or ceremony, King Charles III arrived, not to command attention, but to listen. No dramatic fanfare, no royal distance, just a king stepping into a rural Britain, where lives move at a gentler pace and stories are often unheard. What happened next left many locals deeply moved and reminded the nation of the quiet power of connection. Lancashire is not just a place on a map. It is a land of heritage, resilience, farming traditions, railway history, and close-knit communities. A place where people value sincerity over spectacle. And on this day, as King Charles arrived, something felt different. This was not a visit designed for headlines. This was a visit designed for people. As the train slowed, as the doors opened, as the king stepped forward, there was a shared pause, a moment where time seemed to slow. For many, this wasn't just a royal visit. It felt like being seen. There were no roaring crowds, no booming music. Instead, there were soft smiles, gentle waves, and eyes filled with curiosity and emotion. King Charles emerged calmly, greeting station staff first, not rushing, not waving from afar, but meeting eyes, exchanging words, offering thanks. For the railway workers, many of whom had spent decades behind the scenes, this moment mattered. One local later said, "He didn't treat us like background people. He treated us like part of the story." And in that instant, the visit became something personal. Lancashire represents much of what King Charles has long stood for: rural sustainability, traditional farming, environmental balance, local craftsmanship, community resilience. For decades, Charles has spoken quietly but consistently about protecting rural life and honoring the people who keep it alive. This visit wasn't symbolic. It was intentional. From small farms to local enterprises, Lancashire embodies the values King Charles has championed long before becoming king. As the king moved through the town, something extraordinary happened. There was no barrier of formality. Children waved shyly, elderly residents stood with folded hands, farmers, shopkeepers, and volunteers waited patiently, not for a performance, but for a moment. And King Charles stopped. He asked questions, he listened to stories, he laughed gently, he nodded with understanding. One elderly woman, holding back tears, whispered, "I never thought I'd speak to a king, and yet he spoke to me like a neighbor." Moments like these cannot be scripted. They can only be felt. What moved people most wasn't what King Charles said, it was how he listened. In a world of rushed conversations, the king took his time. In a world of loud voices, he chose quiet presence. A farmer spoke about rising costs and uncertain futures. A volunteer spoke about keeping community centers alive. A young person spoke about staying in the countryside rather than leaving it behind. And King Charles listened, with empathy written across his face. For many, this was the first time they felt their struggles mattered beyond their village. This quiet connection carries deeper meaning. King Charles is a man shaped by decades of preparation, personal loss, and responsibility. Ascending the throne later in life gave him something rare: perspective. He understands patience. He understands continuity. He understands that leadership isn't always loud. In Lancashire, locals didn't see just a monarch. They saw a man carrying duty with humility. Royal visits are often measured by headlines, but this one will be remembered by feelings. A handshake that lingered, a smile that reassured, a conversation that validated. These are the moments that build trust. One local summed it up perfectly. He didn't come to be admired, he came to understand. Lancashire's rural communities face real challenges: climate uncertainty, economic pressure, youth migration. As the visit came to an end, there were no dramatic goodbyes, just gratitude, just quiet waves, just hearts full. For Lancashire, this day will live on, not as a headline, but as a memory passed down. Parents will tell children, grandparents will remember faces, communities will feel acknowledged. In a world craving authenticity, King Charles offered something rare: Not promises, not spectacle, but presence. And sometimes that is enough to move a nation. As the train slowly pulled away from Lancashire, the platform returned to its quiet rhythm. No cameras chasing the moment, no loud applause echoing through the air. Just people standing still, holding on to a feeling they didn't expect to carry home. For many, this wasn't about seeing a king, it was about being noticed. In a small town where days pass without headlines, King Charles's presence whispered something powerful. Your life matters, your work matters, your voice matters. And perhaps that is the true strength of a quiet visit. Because long after the train disappeared down the tracks, the conversations, the smiles, the shared glances, they stayed. They stayed in the hands that were shaking. They stayed in the hearts of people who felt, even for a moment, connected to something larger than themselves. This visit may not be remembered for grand speeches or historic announcements, but it will be remembered for something far more enduring: human connection. In a world that often feels distant and divided, Lancashire was reminded that leadership can be gentle, that respect can be silent, and that change doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, on familiar tracks, and leaves behind a sense of belonging. And maybe that's the lesson this day leaves us with, that even the softest moments can echo the longest. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story moved you, carry it forward. Because kindness, like quiet leadership, is most powerful when it's shared. And when the platform fell quiet again, nothing looked different, but everything felt different. Because that day, people didn't just see a king arrive, they felt seen themselves. No speeches, no promises, just a moment that reminded them they matter. And sometimes, that's all it takes to stay with you forever. If this story touched you, if you believe quiet moments can create lasting change, like this video, comment your thoughts, subscribe for more heartfelt royal stories, and share this with someone who values humanity over headlines. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected.